Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajim. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad. Kama sallaita ala Ibrahima wa ala ali Ibrahima. Innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad. Kama barakta ala Ibrahima wa ala ali Ibrahima. Innaka Hamidum Majid. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربنا زدنا علما يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلبي على دينك آمين. Surah Al-Baqarah. And today we will do the 13th part of the surah, and we will complete from verse number 185 till 188. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فما شهد منكم الشهر فليصمه وما كان مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر ولتكملوا العدة ولتكبروا الله على ما هداكم ولعلكم تشكرون. Translation of verse number 185. The month of Ramadan is the month wherein the Quran was revealed as a guide for mankind, whose signs of significance are absolutely clear, and it is a distinguisher between truth and falsehood. So whosoever amongst you witnesses this month should fast therein, and those who are ill or upon a journey should count the same number of days besides these to fast. Allah desires ease for you and desires not hardship, and that you complete the period and glorify Allah for His guiding you, and that you show gratitude. This verse specified the days in which fasting is to take place. The previous verse merely stated a prescribed number of days, whereas this verse clearly defines the specific month. It is therefore obligatory for every Muslim to fast in this month. Thereafter, Allah mentions another speciality of this month, the revelation of the Quran. It is stated in Surah Qadr that this revelation took place on the night of Qadr. There exists no discrepancy between the two verses because the night of Qadr falls within the month of Ramadan. The question may arise that since the Quran was revealed gradually over a period of 23 years, why does this verse state that it was revealed in a single month of Ramadan? The answer is that on the night of Qadr, the entire Quran was revealed at once from the Lohi Mahfuz protected tablet to the sky above the earth. Here it was placed in the Baitul Izzah. It was from this place that it was then gradually taken through the order of Allah by Hazrat Jibreel alayhi salam to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam over a period of 23 years. Narrated by Tafsir-e-Qartabi, Volume 2, page 292. The description of the Quran thereafter given is evident to all. Allah mentions that it is a guide for mankind, whose signs of guidance are absolutely clear, and it is a distinguisher between truth and falsehood. Thereafter Allah stated, so whosoever from amongst you witnesses the month should fast therein. The obligation is made clear in this verse concerning the fasts, making it binding upon every sane, mature male and female Muslim. However, it is allowed for sick people, travelers, pregnant women, and breastfeeding mothers to miss the fast and to keep the qaza after Ramadan. Women experiencing menstruation or after birth bleeding are also excused from fasting and observe them only upon the expiry of their condition. The various details ruling with regard to these situations are discussed in the hadith and books of jurisprudence. Just a few will be elucidated here. The world is continuously striving to make travel and locomotion more comfortable with the inception of high-speed aircraft. Distance which normally took months to traverse have now been shortened to no longer than a few hours. Since the development of these means, the question always arises regarding the case where a person fasted a full period of 30 days in a certain country, whereafter he flies to another country where still a few days remain before the end of Ramadan. What is he to do during these days? In the opinion of author, since he is witnessing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this country, he should fast the remaining days. This is required from the general context of the verse. So, whosoever witnessed the month should fast therein. This ruling is also evident of one consider the ruling jurists have issued with regard to the person who physically matures during Ramadan and the woman who sees the menstruate in a Ramadan. Both of these, although not fasting during that particular day, will not be allowed to eat or drink for the remainder of the day due to the reverence of this month. Similarly, the person arriving at a place where Ramadan is still not over has to show reverence for the month. This reverence can assume two forms. Either he does not fast but refrains from eating and drinking, or he may fast. For him to fast will be in compliance with this verse. Therefore, he should observe the fast. In this situation, he should make a general niyat intention for fasting. In this way, the fast will be both nafli or nafil optional as well as farz of Ramadan. The benefit is that if Allah regards his fasting to be obligatory in these days, his obligation will be fulfilled. If, however, it was really not necessary for him to fast during these remaining days, he would have reaped the reward of nafil fast. At the same time, he would have shown due reverence for the month of Ramadan. In this verse, Allah excludes the ill and the musafir traveler from the obligation of fasting, instructing them to make up the missed fast afterwards. Allama Jassas Rahmullah in Ahkamul Quran writes that Allah in this verse only specified that the person should make up the exact number of days that he missed. No mention was made that these fasts have to be consecutive without a break in between. Therefore, a person may fast continuously or with breaks between. Both ways are permitted, which is also denoted by the verse Allah desires ease for you and does not desire hardship. Volume 1, page 208. Jurists have mentioned that if a person had not yet completed the qaza of his Ramadan fast by the time the next Ramadan arrives, he should fast for this subsequent Ramadan and complete the qaza thereafter. However, the qaza should be observed as quickly as possible since one has no idea when death will overtake one. Rule: the concession granted to the ill does not apply to all sick people. It will apply only to those who will experience severe difficulty by fasting or have the strong fear of losing a limb or organ thereby. Those people may also take advantage of this concession who anticipate the prolonging of their illness because of the fast. This anticipation should be based either upon previous experience or upon the diagnosis of an expert Muslim doctor who is known to be a fasik open sinner. This ruling is recorded in the canonical books of Darul Mukhtar and Shami, wherein it is also stated that the kafir doctor could intend by such a diagnosis to discourage one from worship. People generally misconstrue any little illness to be an excuse not to fast, even though it is not all that it is not all at all harmful for them to fast. On the other hand, fasting is beneficial for certain diseases. Nevertheless, many people use the excuse of illness to avoid fasting, merely relying upon the word of some doctors. The instruction of every doctor is not considered in this matter, since certain doctors may be totally irreligious while others are disbelievers. Neither do they understand the correct ruling nor the value of fasting. Some people even derive pleasure out of discouraging others from fasting. The work of a kafir doctor will be empathetically ignored in this matter. The sick person should decide using the exercise strength of Iman and the advice of such a Muslim doctor who, together with understanding the importance of fasting and relevant Islamic ruling, also possesses the fear of Allah. Unfortunately, there are many people who do not only miss their fast on the pretext of illness, but who do not even make them up later. Such people drag the great sin with them to their graves. In their love for mere eating and drinking, they are totally oblivious of the Akhirah. The above discussion concerns those whose illness are temporary. They will have to make up these missed fasts at a large stage. However, some people suffer from such sickness that are terminal, from which they have no hope of recovery, nor of keeping the qaza. Other people are so old that they too have lost hope of ever observing the qaza. These people should give the fidya. If at some later stage they do find the ability to fast, it will be obligatory upon them to complete the qaza. Whatever fidya was given up to then will be considered to the nafal charity. Just as it is not permitted for every ill person to miss the fast, so too does it apply to travelers. That traveler who intends a journey of qasr may miss the fast if he or she does so with the intention of keeping the qaza afterwards. This will be permissible once he or she leaves the boundary of his or her own town or city. For as long as he or she is on journey, once they return home, the qaza has to be observed. Should the musafir intend to stay over at a place for 15 days or more, he will cease to be a musafir. If it is still the month of Ramadan, it will be obligatory for him to fast while staying in this place, and he will have to perform his salah in full. The journey of Qasr is 48 Shari miles, equivalent to 88.864 km. A person who travels this distance will be deemed a musafir, whether it be on foot, by car, bus, or by plane. Such a person shall perform Qasr Salah, that is, 2 in place of 4 rakahs farz, and it is permissible for him to omit the fast. It will not be permissible for the person traveling any distance less than this to omit their fast. In spite of this allowance, it is still best for the musafir to fast during Ramadan. The person for this is that by not fasting, a person will be deprived of the blessings and spiritual illumination of Ramadan. Another is that fasting is in the month of Ramadan, when everyone else is also fasting, is much easier than fasting afterwards, when it will be extremely difficult. Another rule is the musafir and the ailing person who happen to die in Ramadan need not take a bequest for the farais to be given, since they did not have any opportunity to observe the qaza. However, had the sick person recovered or the musafir returned home, whereafter they were able to observe the qaza, but did not do so, then it will be compulsory for them to make a bequest for the for the fidya. Once Once the person has left the world, his successors will, after having settled by death, and may pay out his fidya from the remaining third of his estate. For every fast missed, the equivalent of sadaqatul fitr will have to be paid. If the deceased had not made a bequest to this effect and his successor pay it out of their own pocket, this will also inshallah be beneficial. For example, if he missed 10 fasts, then lived for a further 10 days in good health in case of a sick person, or was at home for 10 days in the case of the traveler, he will have to make the bequest for fidya of 10 days to be given before he passes away. In the same example, should he have only lived for 5 days, wherein he did not keep any qaza, it will only be necessary to make a bequest for the fidya of five fast, narrated by Darul Mukhtar. Sunan Nasai, page 318, reports a hadith wherein Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah has allowed the Musafir not to fast and pardoned a portion of his salah. He only has to perform 2 rakah for salah. Allah has also granted the same concession for the breastfeeding and expected mother. They may make them up after Ramadan. That expectant woman who experienced tremendous difficulty while fasting or fear for her or her child's life may omit her fast to make them up afterwards. Similar in the case of the breastfeeding mothers who fear that her child who only subsists on her milk may be deprived of the milk. If the child is able to subsist on another diet such as formula milk or cereal as is commonly nowadays, then it will not be permissible for the mother to miss her fast. It should also be borne in mind that once a child reaches the age of 2, he or she cannot be breastfed. Therefore, the question of the mother of a 2-year-old child not fasting will not arise. Any woman undergoing these conditions during the month of Ramadan should not fast even though they are capable of fasting. They must observe the qaza afterwards. As for their salah, it is completely pardoned without the necessity of qaza. Allah has not instructed man to do anything which is beyond his capabilities. This has been emphasized in numerous verses of the Quran. In the verse under discussion, after discussing the law regarding the ill and musafir, Allah declares, Allah desires ease for you and does not desire hardship. Allah has allowed the sick person to perform salah in whichever method is convenient for him, whether it is standing, sitting, lying down, or even by indication. Zakat is due only when a person possesses the equivalent of nisab. Then too, the zakat will only be payable once the wealth has been in a person's possession for an entire lunar year. The stipulated amount for zakat is also very little, that is, only 1/14th portion of the entire wealth, that is 2.5%. Hajj is also not incumbent upon every person but only on those who have the means to go to Makkah, meet the necessary expenses, return and provide for their families during the interim period. Then too, it is only obligatory once in a lifetime. With regard to fasting, the leniency has already been discussed, which is applicable to all the ill, the musafir, the aged, and those women who are expecting or breastfeeding. The other leniency found in the Sharia are well renowned. And that you complete the period. With regard to this verse, the author of Ruhul Mani, volume 2, page 62, writes that the instruction to fast upon witnessing Ramadan, as well as the concession granted to the ill and the musafir with the explicit order to carefully count the missed fast, are all with a view of including within man to be particular in these matters of calculation. In this way, no fast, whether qaza or not, is not missed, irrespective of whether they are kept in succession or not. In so doing, the entire period of Ramadan is completed. And glorify Allah for His guiding you. This means that one praises Allah for this favor. Hazrat Zaid bin Aslam Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu says that this refers to the takbir that are read during the day of Eid. Hazrat Ibn Abbas Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu says that it refers to the saying of Allahu Akbar. Allah is the greatest upon sighting the moon, and that you may show gratitude. This verse explains the reason for the leniency ordained by Allah for those who are ill or on journey. It is a special favor of Allah for which gratitude and appreciation ought be shown. Now, verse number 186. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي أَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا إِلَى وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. And when my bondsmen ask you about me, verily I am close by. I answer the supplication of the caller when he summons. So they should accept my commandments and believe in me so that they remain on the right. A hadith is narrated in the Tafsir Darul Mansur, volume 1, page 194, that a person asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Is Allah nearby? Then we may supplicate to Him silently, or He is far away, so that we have to call out loudly to Him." The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam remained silent. Whereafter this verse was revealed, and when my bondsman ask you about me. Hazrat Ata bin Abi Rabi Rahmullah says that when the verse "Your Rabb declares, call unto me and I will answer your call" was revealed, the Sahaba Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhum expressed the wish to know when they should supplicate. In reference to this, the verse was revealed, and when my bondsman ask you about me. The previous verses mentioned fasting. The blessed month of Ramadan is the ideal season for earning the akhirah. Much can be achieved in this month since the shayateen are chained and the doors of Jannah are thrown wide open. At the same time, the doors of Jahannam are shut. Narrated by Bukhari, volume 1, page 255. Allah dispatches an announcer every night who says, "O seeker of good, advance, O seeker of evil, desist." Narrated by Tirmizi, volume 1, page 122. The people of Iman are instinctively inclined towards good. They fast, pay special attention to their first salah, and increase their performance of optional nafal salah. They also step up their remembrance of Allah's zikr, recitation of Quran, supplication to Allah, dua, and strive to spend the entire night of Qadr in devotion. During Ramadan, duas are readily accepted, narrated Tirmizi in the chapter of duas. It is for this reason that it is appropriate to make mention of the acceptance of duas during the discussion of Ramadan. The verse says that Allah is close by, hears all duas and accepts them. Whether the dua is silent or audible, He hears everything, even if it not be by the tongue but by the heart. He hears them all and answers. Allah uses the term answer instead of saying He hears all duas, so as to include the duas of the heart as well. Allah says in Surah Kaf, "Most assuredly we have created man. We know what thoughts prevail in this soul, and we are closer to him than his own jugular vein." Verse number 16. Bukhari, volume 2, page 944 quotes Hazrat Abu Musa Ashari Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, who narrates that once while on a journey with Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we were ascending a hill. We were saying Allahu Akbar loudly, upon which Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "O people, have mercy upon yourselves. You are not calling someone who is deaf, nor one who is absent. You are calling on to one who is all hearing, all seeing." Hazrat Salman Farsi Raziallah Ta'ala anhu narrates that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "Verily, your sustainer is modest and magnanimous. He is a modest in that he shies away from returning the hands of his slaves empty when they lift their hands onto him in supplication." Narrated by Tirmizi and Hakim. Hazrat Abu Huraira Raziyallahu Ta'ala narrates that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "Your du'as are always accepted as long as you are not hasty." That is, when you say, "I made dua but it was not accepted." Narrated by Bukhari, volume 2, page 938. In another hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the du'as of a person will always be accepted as long as he does not make dua for something sinful or for the breaking of family ties. This acceptance will be on condition that he is not hasty. Someone asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam the meaning of being hasty, to which he replied, "Hastiness is when a person says that he made dua but it seems that it was not accepted. He then sits back without making further dua." Narrated by Muslim, volume 2, page 352. A person should continuously make dua with enthusiasm. His dua should be heartfelt and sincere. Hazrat Abu Huraira Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu reports that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "There is nothing more virtuous in the sight of Allah than dua." Another hadith states that dua is the essence of worship. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says in another hadith, that person who desires that Allah should accept his dua in times of hardship and adversity should supplicate to Allah in abundance during times of ease. Regarding the meaning of acceptance, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that whenever a person makes dua to Allah, Allah will either grant him exactly what he has asked for or avert a calamity from afflicting him. Allah will do this for him as long as his du'as does not regard something sinful, nor the breaking of family ties. Narrated by Tirmizi has recorded all four ahadith. In the Musnad of Ahmad Rahmullah, an addition is narrated to the above hadith. It says that Allah may also store the dua as a treasure for a person in the hereafter, which will be of great benefit to him there. Narrated by Mishkat, page 196. People keep saying that duas are no longer accepted. In fact, there hardly exists anyone who is truly capable of making dua. Firstly, a dua should be heartfelt. Secondly, the person should abstain from sins. It is narrated in a hadith, a person will have traveled a long distance making his hair disheveled and his body to be covered in dust. He will raise his hands supplicating, "O my Rabb, O my Rabb." His food is from haram sources. His drink is haram, and all his nourishment is derived from haram means. How can his du'as be accepted? Narrated by Muslim, volume 1, page 326. Tirmidhi narrates a hadith wherein Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Dua is beneficial for eradicating calamities which have already befallen a person as well as those who have not. O Allah's servant, stick fast to the making of dua." Another hadith of Tirmidhi states that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Make dua to Allah in such a way that you are convinced of its acceptance. Verily, Allah does not accept the du'as of the negligent and careless heart." So they should accept my commandments so that they remain on the right path. This means that together with accepting all the commandments of Allah, a person should also believe in all the attributes and the being of Allah, trusting only in Him. By doing this, a person will remain firm on guidance and will also receive further guidance from Allah. The author of Ruhul Mani makes the following comment on this verse: they should seek Allah's acceptance for all their du'as wherein they ask for iman and obedience, just as they seek His acceptance for all their du'as regarding their personal needs. Volume 2, page 64. In this tafsir, volume 2, page 214, Alama Qurtubi Rahmullah quotes Harawi Rahmullah as saying that the right path refers to guidance and steadfastness. Alama Behdavi Rahmullah has also made similar comments as the above two in his tafsir, volume 1, page 130. Now, verse number 187. This is a long verse. أحل لكم ليلة الصيام رفث إلى نسائكم هن لباس لكم وأنتم لباس لهن علم الله أنكم كنتم تختنون أنفسكم فتاب عليكم وعفا عنكم فالآن باشروهن وابتغوا ما كتب الله لكم وكلوا واشربوا حتى يتبين لكم الخيط الأبيض من الخيط الأسود من الفجر ثم أتموا الصيام إلى الليل ولا تباشروهن وأنتم عاكفون في المساجد تلك حدود الله ولا تقربوها كذلك يبين الله آياته للناس لعلهم يتقون. Translation of this verse is: permission has been granted for you on the nights of the fast to go unto your wives. They are a garment unto you, and you are a garment unto them. Allah knows well that you have been unfaithful unto yourself, so He turned unto you and forgave you. So now you may cohabit with them and seek which Allah has ordained for you. Eat and drink until the white for you. Eat and drink until the white thread becomes distinct to you from the black thread, that is, the thread of dawn. Then complete the fast till nightfall, and do not touch your woman when you are secluded in devotion, itikaf, in the masjid. These are the limits imposed by Allah, so stray not from them. Thus Allah expounds His verses to man so that they attain piety. Hazrat Bara bin Azib Raziallahu narrates that when fasting was ordained initially, the law was that if a person fell asleep before he terminated his fast at the time of iftar, he was not permitted to eat for the entire night, nor the day thereafter. He could only eat again after terminating the following day's fast. It was transpired that Hazrat Qais bin Sarma who was fasting when he arrived home that evening. He asked his wife whether there was any food to eat. She replied in the negative, adding that she will try and arrange for something to eat. Since he was engaged in hard labor all the day, he fell asleep before his wife could return. When she arrived, she expressed grief over the situation, since he was now unable to eat until the following evening. Consequently, he fasted the following day without having anything to eat. When half the day had passed, the incident was narrated to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thereupon the above verse was revealed. Permission has been granted for you on the nights of fast. The Muslims were overjoyed upon this revelation, whereafter the rest of the verse was also revealed. Eat and drink until the white thread becomes distinct from the black thread of dawn. Narrated by Bukhari, volume 1, page 256. Just as it was prohibited to eat and drink after falling asleep, so too was cohabiting with one's spouse. This proved extremely difficult for the Sahaba Raziallahu Ta'ala Anhum, narrated by Bukhari, volume 2, page 647, narrates that when the fast of Ramadan were made obligatory, it was prohibited for any person to cohabit with his spouse after having fallen asleep. This order applied to the entire month of Ramadan. As a result, regard to this, Allah revealed the following verse. Allah knows well that you have been unfaithful to yourself, so He returned unto you and forgave you. In a narration of Abu Dawud, it is reported that Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu once wished to cohabit with his wife. She informed him that she had already fallen asleep, meaning that it was prohibited for her. She thought that she was merely making an excuse and fulfilled his desire. In the Tafsir Dalul Mansur, volume 1, page 197, it is narrated that one night Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu remained in the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for a long time. Upon arriving home, he found his wife asleep. He woke her with the intention of indulging his conjugal relations. She pointed out to him that she would not comply to his wishes since she had already fallen asleep. Thinking that she had not really fallen asleep, he went ahead. A similar incident took place with Hazrat Ka'b bin Malik radiallahu ta'ala anhu. The following morning, Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu related the episode to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was on this occasion that the above verse was revealed, that is, Allah knows well that you have faithful sorry that you have been unfaithful to yourselves. When a person complies to the dictates of his carnal self nafs, he appears to be faithful to his nafs, since contravening Allah's law will draw his wrath upon a person. The nafs itself will be made to suffer punishment. In this way, by complying to its dictates, a person will actually be unfaithful to himself, because he is causing ultimate suffering to himself. This is an interpretation of unfaithful to yourself. Another interpretation of the phrase unfaithful unto yourself is that people do not submit to the bidding of their nafs to indulge in sexual relation with one's spouse. Because of the constraints of Sharia, although this is a sort of betrayal of the nafs, it is in conformance to the laws of Allah. Once the order of Allah was issued to permit this act, unfaithfulness to the nafs ceased to exist in this regard. It now becomes permissible for a person to eat, drink, and cohabit the entire night through. Those who may have contravened the order of Allah previously were remorseful and forgiven by Him. During the discussion of mutual cohabitation, an extremely subtle portrayal is given concerning the relationship between the husband and wife. Allah says that the wife is like a garment to the husband and vice versa. The author of Ruhul Mani writes that this verse means that each spouse is a source of contentment and courage to the other. This has been referred to in the following verse of Surah Araf, that he may find solace in her, verse 189. The same is mentioned in Surah Rum, where it is stated, so that you may find solace in her, verse 21. The couple have been described as garments to each other because they may embrace and cling onto each other. Another interpretation is that they offer protection to each other from sin and unchaste behavior, just as clothing protects one from the elements. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in a hadith that the person who gets married has completed half of his religion. Now it is only remain for him to fear Allah with regard to the other half. Narrated by Mishkatul Masabi from Beheki. The author of Ruhul Mani writes further with regard to the first part of the verse, that is, women are a garment for you. He says that man cannot live without woman. Similarly, women can also not make do without men, as pointed out by the next phrase, that is, and you are a garment unto them. And seek that which Allah has ordained for you. Hazrat Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu says that this was referred to the seeking of children. Therefore, one should indulge in sexual intercourse with the intention that Allah bestows one with children. It is written in Ruhul Mani, volume 2, page 65, that the purpose of marriage should be the enhancement of progeny. The prime objective of marriage should not merely to be gratification of one's passion. Allah has merely placed the passion of sex in man as, as a mean to perpetuate the human race. This is just as He had placed the instinct of hunger in man as a means to preserve his life. The mere satisfaction of these passions is a trait of animals. Some commentators have mentioned that since the object of sexual intercourse is the bearing of children, it would not be permissible to cohabit in any way besides the normal method. This is so because other methods are not conducive to reproduction. Eat and drink until the white thread becomes distinct for you from the black thread, that is, the thread of dawn. This verse pronounces the permission to eat up to the time of dawn during the nights of fasting. The white thread refers to the light of day, which is introduced by the break of dawn. The black thread refers to the darkness of night. The interpretation was offered by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, as reported in Bukhari, volume 1, page 357. Hazrat Sahil bin Saad radiallahu ta'ala narrates that initially only the verse eat and drink until the white thread becomes distinct for you from the black thread was revealed. The addition of the thread of dawn was not then included. Some people used to tie a white and a black thread on their legs and continue eating until they could distinguish between the two. One should bear in mind that there was no electricity or light in that time as we know it today. Allahu Akbar. The homes were small, and even once the light became bright outside, their homes remained dark. Therefore, they could eat till it was quite late. These people understood the literal meaning of the verse. Thereafter, Allah revealed the addition of the thread of dawn. It was then that they understood that it referred to the day and night. Narrated by Bukhari, volume 1, page 287. It is gathered from this discussion that the final time for Sahri, eat to time in the morning before the fast, is the break of dawn. Since the entire night is allowed for cohabitation, it follows that this is also permitted up to dawn. It is also understood that from this that the state of janaba, when one is in need of bath after intercourse, does not nullify the fast. The next part of the verse concerns the expiry time of the fast. Allah says, then complete the fast till the night. The night begins with the setting of the sun. As soon as the sun goes down, it will be time for iftar, termination of the fast. Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala reports that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the time for iftar sets in when the night approaches from the east. The day fades away in the west and the sun disappears. Narrated by Bukhari, volume 1, page 262. It is preferable to break the fast immediately upon the setting of the sun, just as it is best to eat the sahri during the last portion of the night. Narrated by Muslim, volume 1, page 351. However, the sahri should not be delayed so much that one fears that dawn has already broken. And do not cohabit with them, your wives, while you are secluded in devotion, itikaf in the masajids. Itikaf is a sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and is only possible in the masjid. The apropos niyat, intention for nikah has to be made, without which whatever time spent in the masjid will not be regarded as itikaf. To remain in itikaf during the prescribed nights will facilitate remaining awake to the night of Qadr and engaging in ibadah, worship. In itikaf, a person's contact with Allah's creation diminishes, but virtue of which complete attention can be focused on Allah alone. A person is mentally and physically engrossed in devotion, engaging the body and tongue. Hazrat Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala reports that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would remain in itikaf for 10 days during every Ramadan. In his final Ramadan, he remained in itikaf for 20 days, narrated by Bukhari, Volume 1, page 274. Hazrat Ubay bin Ka'b radiallahu ta'ala anhu said that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam would always perform itikaf for 10 days every year. It once occurred that he was unable to perform it, so the following year he remained in itikaf for 20 days, narrated by Abu Dawud, Volume 1, page 334. It also happened that once he remained for 20 days in itikaf during the month of Shawwal. Hazrat Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu reports that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, with regard to itikaf, it prevents one from sins and occurs for him the reward of performing all good deeds. Narrated by Ibn Majah, page 127. Whether by day or night, it is prohibited for a person in itikaf to cohabit with his wife or even to touch her lustfully. Should he engage in intercourse with her, this itikaf will be nullified. He may only touch her if there is no lust. Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala narrates that while in itikaf, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam would allow her to wash his hair. Another narration mentioned that she used to comb his hair, narrated by Bukhari, Volume 1, page 272. He also narrates that a person in itikaf may only enter his house, leave the masjid for the purpose of revealing himself. This refers to using the toilet, since a person is able to eat and drink in the masjid. He will not be permitted to leave its precincts of this purpose. The person who remains in itikaf and spends his nights in worship will receive the blessings and virtue of the night of Qadr. Allah says in the Quran, the night of Qadr is better than 1,000 months. For this reason, a person should always search for this night. Especially during the last odd numbered nights of Ramadan, 1,000 months is equivalent to 83 years and 4 months. Therefore, earning such a great reward for just a few moments' toil is indeed great blessing. For this reason, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, only that person will be deprived of the good of this night who is a complete loser. Narrated by Mishkatul Masabi, page 173. Another hadith states that all the sins of that person will be forgiven, who with full conviction in its reward spends the night of Qadr in Nafal Salah, narrated by Bukhari, Volume 1, page 270. Whomsoever does any good act of his own will, then this is surely best for him. This verse encourages the performance of all optional nafil acts and is mentioned within the preceding discussion of fasting. The general usage of terms would include any optional action. Allah is most benevolent and rewards every action a minimum of tenfold. Hazrat Abu Ayyub Ansari radiallahu ta'ala narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, the person who fasted during Ramadan then follows it up to 6 fasts in the month of Shawwal will receive the reward of fasting for the entire year. Should he do this every year, he will receive the reward of fasting for his entire lifetime. Narrated by Muslim, Volume 1, page 369. After observing the fast of Ramadan, an additional 6 fasts will total 36, which is equivalent to 360 in the sight of Allah. Because Allah rewards every action a minimum of tenfold. In this way, its observance every year will amount the fasting the entire year. Every year, therefore, one's entire lifetime, even if Ramadan has 29 days, inshallah, Allah will still accord the person the reward of a whole year, because every Muslim would have kept the 13th fast and had it arrived. Much virtue has been narrated concerning fasting of Mondays and on Thursdays. Hazrat Abu Huraira radiallahu ta'ala reports that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, man's actions are presented before Allah every Monday and Thursday. Therefore, I like my actions to be presented while I am in the state of fasting. Narrated by Tirmizi, Volume 1, page 329. There is much virtue in fasting of these days called bidah. They are the 13th, 14th, and 15th of every month. Hazrat Abu Zar Raziallahu Ta'ala anhu narrates that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, when you fast 3 days a month, then observe them on the 13th, 14th, and 15th days, narrated by Tirmizi, volume 1, page 133. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam also instructed the observance of the fast on these days, narrated by Nisai, volume 1, page 329. Bukhari, volume 1, page 268 records a hadith wherein Hazrat Aisha Raziallahu Ta'ala anha says, during the period of ignorance, the Quraysh used to fast on the day of Ashura. When Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam arrived in Medina, he also observed this fast and instructed the Sahaba Raziallahu Ta'ala anhum to do the same. When the fast of Ramadan became obligatory, the compulsion of the fast of Ashura no longer remained. Thereafter, whoever wished to fast on that day fasted, and whoever did not wish to did not fast. It is learned from the hadith that the fast of Ashura was strictly ordained even before that of Ramadan. It was only upon the obligatory of Ramadan that its compulsion was revoked, making it optional. In a hadith of Muslim, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I am convinced that Allah will forgive the sins of an entire year that has passed, as well as those of an entire year still to come, in lieu of the fast of the day of Arafat, the 9th of Zil Hajj. I am also convinced that Allah will forgive the sins of an entire year that has passed for observing the fast of Ashura. Hazrat Abu Huraira Raziallahu Ta'ala anhu narrates that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, the best of fast under the fast of Ramadan are those of Muharram, that is the first 10 days of Muharram, which is Allah's month. The best of all salah after the first salah is that of the night, that is the Tahajjud, narrated by Muslim, volume 1, page 366. According to Allama Taibi Rahimullah, the fast of Muharram mentioned in the hadith refers to that of Ashura as well as those of this entire month. Referring to the month of Muharram as Allah's month is merely to indicate its auspiciousness, since every month is Allah's. Hazrat Ibn Abbas Raziallahu Ta'ala anhu narrates that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam instructed the observance of the 9th and 10th of Muharram fast so as to contradict the practice of the Jews who only fasted on the 10th, narrated by Tirmizi, volume 1, page 122. Sheikh Ibn Hammam Rahimullah mentioned that the fast on the 10th of Muharram is preferable mustahab. So too it is to fast a day prior 9th or a day after 11th. To fast only on the day of Ashura 10th is makruh, reprehensible, because it is an emulation of the practice of the Jews, narrated by Mirkat. The virtue of fasting during the 9th day of Muharram has already been mentioned. To fast on each of the first 10 days also holds great merit. Hazrat Ibn Abbas Raziallahu Ta'ala narrates that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, the action of the first 10 days of Zil Hajj are superior than those of any other days. The Sahaba Raziallahu Ta'ala inquired, even superior to jihad in Allah's path? Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam replied, yes, even jihad in Allah's path is not superior to the action of these days, except that a person goes out in the path of Allah with his life and wealth, then returns with none of these, narrated by Bukhari, volume 1, page 132. The mother of the believers, Hazrat Hafsa Raziallahu Ta'ala narrates that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would never miss the fast of Ashura, the 10 days of Zil Hajj, excluding the 10th, and 3 days every month. So, the 9th day of Zil Hajj is the day when all those performing Hajj proceed to Arafah. From after Zuhr up to the sunset, they are to be engaged in dua. For this reason, it would be better for them not to fast on this day. Even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not fast on this day when he performed his Hajj. Narrated by Bukhari, Volume 1, page 267. Narrated by Muslim, Volume 1, page 370, 397. A person will be rewarded for any nafal action, be it fasting, salah, dhikr, hajj or umrah. However, it is of paramount importance that these actions be performed in accordance with the directive and principles of the Sharia. There is such great merit in fasting optionally that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah will place such a distance between Jahannam and the person who fasts in the path of Allah, that is for the pleasure of Allah, which equals the distance a person will walk in 70 years, that is, this person will never enter Jahannam. The phrase in the path of Allah would commonly refer to jihad, for which reason Imam Bukhari rahimahullah included this hadith in the chapter of jihad. However, many commentators of hadith have interpreted it to mean one who fasts for the pleasure of Allah. Both meanings have been recorded in Fathul Bari, volume 2, page 48. A person should continue observing nafal fast as long as it does not weaken one's ability to carry out the obligatory duties, nor the earning of halal means for one's family. Hazrat Abdullah bin Amr ibn al-As used to fast perpetually and spend entire nights in salah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam advised him, saying, "Do not behave in this manner. Fast at times and do not fast sometimes. Perform salah at night and sleep as well. Your body, your eyes, your wife, and your guest will have a right upon you." The best of fast is that of Hazrat Dawood alayhi salam. He would fast a day, then skip a day, that is, fast every alternative day. Narrated by Bukhari, volume 1, page 265. In total, there are 5 days every year when fasting is haram. They are the days of Eid al-Fitr, 1st of Shawwal, and the 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th of Zul Hajj. These 4 days of Zul Hajj are called Ayamut Tashriq, the days of Tashriq. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that these days are days of eating, drinking, and remembering Allah. Narrated by narrated by Muslim, volume 1, page 260. A hadith is narrated in Bukhari, volume 1, page 267, from Hazrat Abu Musa radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu, as well as Hazrat Abu Huraira radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited fasting on the days of Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha, 10th of Zul Hajj. Along the zikr, remembrance of Allah is imperative at all times. Special importance should be accorded to it on the day of Tashriq. A woman whose husband is at home cannot observe nafal fast without his consent. With regard to the first Ramazan fast, his consent is not required. In this case, even if he refuses, he should fast, since the farais of Allah supersedes everything else. There have been many people who fast daily. This is not an act of merit, since Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "The person who is always fasting has not really fasted." Narrated by Bukhari, volume 1, page 265. It is stated in another hadith that he has neither fasted nor has he not fasted, that is, did not make iftar. Narrated by Muslim, volume 1, page 367. The reason is that by fasting every day, the body grows accustomed to not eating. It is then as if eating times were merely adjusted. The best of all fast is to fast every alternate days. This was the practice of the Prophet Hazrat Dawood alayhi salam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that there was no fast superior to that of Hazrat Dawood alayhi salam. Narrated by Muslim, volume 1, page 367. According to another narration, he said that no fast was more virtuous than this. Narrated by Bukhari, volume 1, page 765. These are the limits imposed by Allah, so approach them not. This order has been mentioned after the various injunctions which stipulated the obligation of fasting. The concession granted to the ill and the traveler. the beginning and terminating times of the fast, and the prohibition of the person in itikaf to cohabit with his wife. All of these constitutes the limitation set by Allah. These must be adhered to and may not be violated. No person should adopt any action which will serve to nullify his fast or his itikaf. No person is allowed to miss nor break a fast without a valid excuse that is acceptable in the Sharia. The instruction not even approach these restrictions point to the fact that no action must be performed which will cause the fast to be put to waste in any way. Neither should the sehri be delayed until the break of dawn, nor should the aftar termination of the fast be so hastened that one eats before sunset. A fasting person must also not place anything into his mouth that may be swallowed, nor be excessive in putting water into his nostrils while performing wuzu ablution. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had mentioned, "Do be through when putting water into your nostrils except when you are fasting," narrated by Abu Dawud. The use of the miswak has been established from the hadith, but other methods of oral hygiene has been classified as being makruh when fasting because of the possibility of something entering the throat. Now, verse number 188. ولا تأكلوا أموالكم بينكم بالباطل وتدلوا بها إلى الحكام لتأكلوا فريقا من أموال الناس بالإثم وأنتم تعلمون. Do not falsely devour the wealth of each other, taking it to the judges so that you may sinfully consume a bit of people's wealth while you are fully aware of it. This verse declares that it is forbidden to acquire the wealth of other people by unlawful means and then utilizing the same. During Ramadan, a person is not allowed to consume even halal things. So, in this verse, which follows immediately after the mention of Ramadan, he is instructed never to consume things that are haram, not during Ramadan nor at any other time. The clause falsely has been stipulated to exclude all legitimate means of gaining another's wealth, that is, things that have been gifted to one, or profits earned through lawful trade, or anything acquired by legal inheritance. All these are earned lawfully and are halal. There exist numerous ways of acquiring wealth illegally, some of which have been mentioned in the discussion of the verse, "O people, eat of the lawful and wholesome things of the earth." Verse 168. In this particular verse, one method is described whereby the wealth of people is usurped. This is by exploitation of the legal system, which can assume various forms. One of the methods whereby wealth is usurped by means of the legal system is when someone lays a false claim to someone's property. When the matter is referred to a court, the claimant bribes and magistrate to pronounce the judgment in his favor. Another method involves a person who fabricates a false document or witness by which judgment is passed in his favor. Yet another way this is done in which certain unjust law of a country which contravene those of Sharia are utilized to expropriate another's property. An example of this is the law in a certain countries which state that only sons inherit while daughters receive nothing from the state. Consequently, the sons of deceased persons using this law secure their sole share, depriving their sisters. Another example of this application is where the law of a country stipulates that the wealth of a certain people should be forcefully expropriated and given to others. In all these situations, the wealth of the oppressed person will not be halal for the oppressor. Besides these, there are still many more examples. Those people who understand that devices of lawsuits and deception utilize these to illegally acquire the property of others. People who acquire the wealth of others through these unjust decisions of a magistrate cannot consider their ill gotten gains to be halal. They will suffer the grievous consequence and resultant chastisement in this world and in the hereafter. They should not be content that they had procured this wealth through a legal channel. They should bear in mind that the judge of the last day will hear their case. Hazrat Salma Raziallahu Ta'ala Anha narrates that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, I am only human. You present your disputes before me, while it is possible that some of you are more proficient in contesting your case than others. I may pass judgment in their favor according to what is presented before me. This verdict may be erroneous. Therefore, the person in whose favor I pass judgment should not consider the property of his brother as being lawful for him. It will be a spark of Jahannam which I have decreed in his favor, narrated by Bukhari, volume 2, page 1062. The meaning of this hadith is that if someone presented a false case before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and was extremely proficient in its presentation, the verdict may have been issued in his favor, although the property thus procured was in actual fact not this. It was thus incorrect for him to consider this property lawful, thinking it to be the decision of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In another hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, the person who unlawfully claimed the property of another is not from amongst us and should prepare his abode in Jahannam, narrated by Muslim, volume 1, page 57. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says in another hadith, the person who appreciates the wealth of another by means of a false oath will meet Allah on the day of judgment in such a way that Allah's wrath will be upon them. Narrated by Bukhari, volume 2, page 987 and Muslim, volume 1, page 80. A portion of people's wealth, it is understood that from this verse that not only is it prohibited to unlawfully seize the wealth of Muslims, but it is equally forbidden to usurp the wealth of non-Muslims. The kafir living in a Muslim state is termed zimni. It is incumbent upon every Muslim to protect the life and property of this person. It is forbidden to expropriate his wealth in any way. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.